Here it is, everybody, the new Lamborghini Revuelto. Now, this isn't some limited edition car based on the Aventador, rather it's the car that replaces it as Lamborghini's new flagship supercar. A car that you're going to see prowling the streets of a city near you very soon, and with a V12 hybrid, you're going to be able to hear it too. Now, we really don't have a lot of time today, and clearly it's very busy, but we're going to get you as close to the action as possible. So let's go take a look. Miura, Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, Aventador, and now Revuelto. Each car has its own distinct design and character that marks significant periods in Lamborghini's history. And this is the look of the first car to introduce electrification on a mass scale. Now, we've seen a hybrid Lamborghini before with the Sian. That was only produced in small numbers though, and it doesn't come as a huge surprise that the Revuelto actually takes some inspiration from that hybrid car, namely the big Y-shaped LED headlights out front. These things absolutely pierce in the dark and looked really cool when the car was being unveiled earlier. It's also kind of like this fin coming up at the front here, which to me looks a little bit like the Huracan and is maybe more of a carryover of the Aventador. 21-inch wheels at the front, 22s at the rear. And then we come on to the next kind of major design change here, which is this fin integrated into the door, probably to extract pressure from the wheel arch and channel it down the side of the car, improving efficiency. Another link to the Sian is this triangular element down the side here. It kind of splits the vent into two distinctly different sections, and it just gives the car a slightly more distinct look from the side, separating it from the Aventador, because to be honest, there's actually quite a lot of similarities between this and the Aventador. It's not nearly as dramatic as the change from the Murcielago to the Aventador, but if anything, it just feels like a more refined package, something that's a little bit more cohesive. It's at the back where things get really wild. Now, there are some elements here that have been picked from older Lamborghinis, like the rear Y lights. We saw those on the Centenario, also saw them on the Benino as well. But the thing that really stands out is the two exhausts that protrude outwards. Now, talking to the designer, Meteor, he actually says that while the old cars were kind of designed around fighter jets, here we're looking at a spaceship. Not entirely sure it works for me, but it's definitely, I would say, the defining character of the Revuelto, these two big exhausts. You'll also see there's a massive diffuser down here as well, so there's been a big improvement when it comes to downforce. There's 30% more downforce at the front, 70% more at the rear. You also have active aerodynamics at the back too, with a movable rear wing. Now, obviously, a lot more downforce could mean more drag, but Lamborghini says it's improved aerodynamic efficiency by 60%, so it should be a lot more slippery. And they're even claiming a top speed of over 217 miles per hour, which I don't find very difficult to believe at all. It's only when you peel back the skin do you see how different the Revuelto is to the Aventador, because underneath all of that is a skeletal-like new monocoque, or monofuselage as Lamborghini's calling it. Yes, ultimately it's a fancy name for something that's quite boring, but the monofuselage actually takes inspiration from the aviation industry, hence the name. It's made from multi-technology carbon fibre, with a rocker ring made of carbon fibre reinforced plastics that holds the forged composite bits together, such as the tub and front subframe. That all means the Revuelto chassis is considerably lighter than the underpinnings of the Aventador. Now, it weighs in at 188 kilograms, which is about 10% lighter than the tub on the Aventador, and it's also a lot stiffer as well. Torsional rigidity has been increased by 25%, which apparently is 40,000 Newton meters per degree. I've got no idea what that means, but more torsional rigidity is always better, and according to Lamborghini, it will have best-in-class dynamic capabilities. Here it is, the heart of the Revuelto. It's what we were really hoping it would be, a 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 producing 825 horsepower. Of course, the big reason why your V12 supercar now comes with electric power is because of those pesky emission laws. Now, I know it's really boring, but what it does mean is that you can actually have some silent running in the Revuelto. Of course, that's not really something that Lamborghini customers are all that interested in. But think of it like this. Wouldn't it be cool if you're driving around a city in complete silence and then you fired up the V12 engine, petrifying everybody around you? I think that sounds pretty funny in all fairness. Back to the V12. Now, it's got a new code name, L545, but essentially it's a heavily reworked version of the V12 that we found in the Aventador, only now it's lighter and leaner. It's actually the same configuration that you found on the SCV12 track car. So the engine's been rotated 180 degrees, and now the gearbox is transverse. And speaking of the gearbox, it's no longer that semi-automated manual as before, which was always a little bit jerky. It's now an 8-speed DCT, which should be a hell of a lot smoother. But if you do fancy a slightly firmer shift, you can actually mess about with the driver settings, which we'll get onto in a little bit because they're a bit bonkers. The interior feels completely different to the Aventador now. Lamborghini says it's actually been working quite a lot on making it feel more spacious. So it's actually an inch taller, so there's definitely a little bit more headroom. And they've also broken up the center console, so it does feel as though there's just a bit more air going on in here, a little less claustrophobic than the Aventador. That being said, the dash is still on the high side, so it's not the easiest car to look out of, but that's all part of the Lamborghini charm, right? It's a lot more high-tech than before as well. We've got a 12.3-inch panel ahead of me for the driver's display, an 8.4-inch panel for the center console, and a 9.1-inch panel for the passenger. Now, that's something that they can configure. At the moment, it shows speed, but what they're going to have to do is lean forward to change it, which is going to be really hard when you're pinned to the back of the chair. And finally, we've got a completely new steering wheel with lots of rotary dials on them, which has actually been inspired again by the SCV12. There are also 13 different driver modes. 13! And they can all be changed using the switches right here on the steering wheel. Now, what you're looking at is basically a full electric mode if you want to, with city mode, or you can go for the full whack, getting both the combustion engine and the electric motors singing in harmony. You can also have just the combustion motor if you fancy it as well. And Lamborghini says that if you put it in Corsa, it's also a little bit more playful. We need to talk about what Revuelto actually means. Now, Lamborghini says it's the name of a Spanish bull, which is always the case, that fought in Barcelona in 1880. But when I went on Google Translate, the literal translation of it means scrambled in Spanish, or also higgledy-piggledy. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is price. Now, we've not been given an exact price just yet, but from what I've heard, it's going to cost more than the old Aventador SVJ. So expect a price in excess of £400,000. But apparently, orders for the higgledy-piggledy have already sold out for the first 2 years. And people said the V12 was dead. Seems like it's stronger than ever.